Hey Smoothers, it's Cam, and today on Nobody Asked, we're gonna figure out if you can beat Halo Infinite without shooting. So, let's set some rules. Rule number 1, I'm not allowed to shoot. That means I can't use any weapon I pick up, and I also can't use any vehicle that you get into, or turret, anything like that. No shooting is allowed. That's pretty much the only rule, to be honest. Oh yeah, and to add to this challenge, I have never played Halo Infinite in my life. This is my first time playing through the campaign, so I have no idea how possible this challenge is, and we're going to be playing on the hardest difficulty because I hate myself. So as soon as the game starts, I actually have a couple tactics I can use to kill. Obviously the main one is punching, but also in Halo Infinite they added a feature where you can pick up fusion coils and throw them. This feature is huge, and I'm sure down the line it's going to help me quite a bit for beating this game without shooting. I also have an ability that I can scan to see the fusion coils around me. It also shows objectives and guns, but to be honest, I kind of forget to use it the majority of the time. So anyways, moving through this first mission is pretty easy. All of the first enemies are just grunts, so they can't really do that much damage even on legendary. Eventually get to a point where I pick up a mangler simply because I think the punching animation looks cooler with it because it has these two knives on the front of it. I don't think it does more damage. It's all about aesthetic. After this, I come into a room where I meet a very angry monkey who's supposed to be super intimidating. Once he runs up to me, I just keep punching him in the face. Even on legendary, you can just punch him to death and he can't do anything about it. In the next room, I learned that fusion coils are actually a double-edged sword, because if one blows up anywhere near me, it's an instant death on legendary difficulty, pretty much. And in this instance, I actually throw one a little too close to another fusion coil, and then that one kills me. After learning my lesson, I get into a spot where there's a few brutes in the same room. The brutes are honestly not a problem if I just isolate the fights and beat them down one by one. If it's an open area though, the brutes will become a problem, and you'll see that a little bit later in the video. After that, we come to this area with the elevator, and this is the first spot I died probably 5 times before getting the hang of it. It's kind of funny, I'm showing you the attempt that I didn't die, and it almost looks like I know what I'm doing, and that is simply just because I died so many times, I got to learn exactly what I need to do. Exiting the elevator is when we get to pick up our first grenades, and this is going to be our second way of killing things at a distance from us. Not only could the grenades be used to kill stuff at a distance, but they could also be used to make enemies try to jump out of the way, which would give us time to run over to them and beat them to death. The basic human grenade is probably the worst of them all. The best ones are definitely the ones that stick because they can instantly kill if you stick it to somebody. Moving on, I was starting to really get the flow of how combat works when you can't shoot. Watching this back, this seems like lore accurate Master Chief. Once I finally got to the bridge, this is where I was truly tested on my skills that I had been learning up until this point. This room was very wide open with a bunch of brutes in it, kind of the worst case scenario for me. After dying just a couple times, I found the most efficient way to take out these first brutes was to throw a grenade, stick one, hit this one in the back, throw another grenade to kill another one of the brutes while I beat down the other one. It was very complicated. Eventually, I had everything killed except for the final officer, and he messed up my day a few times. Even on the attempt where I killed him, it was very close. I missed a bunch of grenade throws at him. Finally, in a dramatic fashion, I stuck my last grenade to him, and then I celebrated a little bit. After that, I had to take out the 2 cooling manifolds. I threw a fusion coil at one and a plasma grenade at the other, while kind of just running away from everything. Even though the room was still filled with a bunch of enemies, I only had to kill the one brute that was close to the objective, and then I could overload the engines. With everything blowing up now, Master Chief decided it was probably time to leave, so we booked it out of there. This part was pretty easy. The game didn't really put too many enemies in front of us. A lot of them were blown up in scripted events. The one time we actually did die was towards the end part where we had to jump into this one area that has a brute and a couple grunts, but grenades came in handy to take those out. And then we were on to the next mission, where I had a reality check into how difficult this challenge was really going to be. So moving on through the rest of this video, I'm mainly going to show you the parts where I don't die. If it looks like I know what I'm doing, that's because of trial and error. The amount of times I died in every single section is insane. For example, this one room, once you get towards the end of it, there's 2 elites that are at the end. Even just 2 elites can really ruin my day. especially if I have no grenades or if there's no fusion coils around, because while I'm beating down one of them, the other one is going to mop me. And at this point, I had no upgrades for my grappling hook or armor or anything. I didn't even know that existed at this point, actually. So anyways, eventually I get past this part and go up this gravity lift, where I come to another wide open area with another 2 elites waiting for me at the end. This is where I learned a strategy that I will keep using throughout the game, where if I find a grenade I can pick up that I already have the max amount of, I'm going to throw it anyways because there's no point in me not throwing it. I'll pick it up and then keep going. Also, the grappling hook came in handy here, as I could just jump off the edge and kind of slip my way around most of the enemies. After running by them all and getting a checkpoint, I actually ran back just to kill a couple guys and get a grenade because I wasn't sure what was ahead and I wanted to make sure I had a grenade going into it. But it turned out what was ahead was actually my new waifu. I can just imagine what Rule 34 has done to this character, but damn, she is thick. Now moving on, I actually learned a new strategy I can use against jackals with shields. If I launch the grappling hook at them, it will stun them, but also giving the benefit of the grappling hook not having a cooldown, so I can instantly use it again. Eventually we get to a part where a bridge slowly builds itself, which is fine, except for the fact that there is a brute sitting at the end on a turret. Fantastic, I love this. After dying a lot of times, I found out the best way to deal with this is slowly moving up as the bridge builds and cover comes up for me. And then once I was close enough, I threw a grenade at the brute to get him off that turret, and then grappled my way up and around, killing things on the way, but mostly just running towards the next checkpoint. After that part, I felt pretty confident. I got into a room where there was only one brute. Easy, piece of cake. One brute? Okay. And then I got a skewer in the face. So I reloaded the checkpoint, was a lot more careful, grappled up, and took him out. That brought us into another area that was pretty wide open, but for the most part it was just jackals and grunts, so I took care of them pretty easily. And then I met Tremonius. This is when I learned that the cutscenes in this game flow really well into the gameplay. The problem was I was not ready. Not only that, but the checkpoint was right after, and it's pretty ironic that he keeps saying no escape, because there really was no escape for me. I would die, reload the checkpoint, and then die again. Eventually the game realized this was happening and brought me back in time a little bit. So this time after the cutscene, I was prepared, grappled over and took out the 2 jackals, and then I focused on Tremonius. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. Big Monkey Man. Luckily, there was a lot of grenades scattered throughout this room, so I just stuck him a few times, gave him a couple punches, and then Big Monkey Man was dead. After finishing that boss fight, I was feeling confident again, and that's when I put my fist through this grunt right into a fusion coil. Turns out that's a bad idea. Also, if we back up a little bit, you will notice I completely ran by an upgrade point. Somehow a flashing green box didn't trigger in my mind that that's something I should probably look into. But anyways, let's continue on. We open up the bay door, which allows us to leave into the open world of Halo Infinite. The problem is it's an open world, wide open. I can get shot from literally every direction. Remember when I said open areas are my weakness? This whole game is my weakness. I died around 24 times before figuring out this first area, and I will say I'm lucky you start off with the grappling hook in this game. I could never see myself getting past this part without the grappling hook. Through a combination of grenades, fusion coils, the grappling hook, and punching, eventually I was able to finally clear this landing zone. After getting a ride from what's-his-name, we ended up at this forward operating base, FOB, where I had to take out some enemies. I died 3 times before learning the proper way to take them out, like the proper order, I guess. Guess there's no proper order, but like the best way to take them out without dying. After taking over this FOB, my waifu finally told me about upgrades to equipment, and I also unlocked vehicles. That's when I had a fantastic idea. So I called in a mongoose, drove over to this one spot where some marines were captured. Before going to save the marines, I grabbed an upgrade that would make my grapple hook do some shock damage if I grappled onto someone, quickly saved them, and then went back to the FOB. That's when I called in another mongoose and brought a marine with me. I can't shoot, but this dude can. On my way over to the ransom keep, I have no idea what the ransom keep even is at this point. I don't think I even had to go there. But anyways, on my way there, I found a weapon shack, and this is when I found a god tier combination. I handed the skewer? Yeah. I handed it to the Marine, put her on the back of the mongoose, and we were an unstoppable force. With me driving around, running over enemies, and the Marine on the back with infinite ammo, one-shotting everything, we took out everything in this area so quickly. I think this might be just the go-to strategy. Eventually, I did find a rocket launcher, and I gave that to the Marine. I know that normally this is a bad idea, because the AI in Halo historically is pretty stupid and will kill us, but this Marine surprised me and had some self-control. After wiping out pretty much all the enemies, I did have to get off the mongoose so I could kill the silos, since the Marine wouldn't target them. Inside is where I found one of the most dangerous enemies I have to face, which is an invisible elite with an energy sword. I never saw him coming, and in one hit he took out my shields, and then the Jackal finished me off. After a few attempts, I did manage to take him out after jumping his sword swipe like a boss, but in this time, the Jackal killed my Marine. So I picked up the energy sword and got some revenge, but revenge will never bring her back. After this, I actually realized that I had a main objective marked on the map. Somehow didn't see that before, so I took the tank and started driving towards it. This tank is kind of useless to me, to be honest, since I can't shoot, but I guess it protects me from dying. Once driving to the tower, I had to ditch the tank anyways because there's a big ravine, so I just used the grappling hook to scale the side of this cliff. Went inside, died a few times, learned the right path to take, and then I learned another technique that I can use where I use the energy sword to hit brutes once to take their shields off, and then switch to hit them again. That way I'm not wasting the energy sword, because I don't want to waste it. It is very useful to me. On the attempt that I actually did finally make it in to my objective, I used up the entirety of the energy sword, sadly. If I knew what I was in for once getting into the tower, I probably would have saved the energy sword. And that's what I'm talking about when I say me not playing this game adds an extra bit of difficulty to it, even with the game already being hard. I don't know why I didn't try playing the game first, but we're in it now. Before I could even get into the tower, I had to turn the gravity lift on. After a few attempts, I realized that my only chance of surviving was to hide in this one corridor and wait for them to come to me, because this area is way too wide open, and I was getting sniped whenever I went out and tried to kill stuff, not doing it this cheesy way. I wouldn't say I'm cheesing the game, I think this is strategy. After turning on the gravity lift, I had to run around to get more height and then grapple up into it, because if I just tried to go and jump into it, I was getting shot from every direction. Getting into the tower, I unlocked a new ability, which is this scanner dart, which is pretty useful, honestly. Not as useful as the grappling hook, but it is actually a necessity in this upcoming part. If you played the game, you already know what I'm talking about. At the top of the tower, we meet Chaklock, our new BFF. For the next couple hours, that's right, this took me a few hours to beat. When he says this,
"It is where you will be broken."
He is not wrong. He did break me. Instead of just telling you how many times I died, I'll show you a screenshot I took while editing. All of those green markers are points where I died, and this was just in the first attempt I took. I actually tried again, and that's a separate strip of recording. But since I had died so many times and was fighting him for so long, eventually I learned a strategy where I would throw a fusion coil at him and then grapple him. This would stun him for long enough to get in a punch, and then stick him with a grenade. Sadly, going into this fight, I only had one grenade, so I could do this for the first cycle, and then I would have to run around and try to collect the 2 other grenades that were still in the room. And then after I used those grenades, I mainly had to just focus on throwing the fusion coils, grappling him, and then punching him twice before running away, while also using the radar ability so I could see where he was, because he was invisible. Also in this fight, I died a few times just because when you throw the fusion coils, if you're jumping or close to a wall, sometimes it'll just hit the wall and kill you. So that was a really fun way to die, especially when I was close to killing him. Eventually I did get him, and I'll show a little bit of the clip where I did get him. It really looks like I know what I'm doing, and I should know what I'm doing since I played this for so long. Eventually I killed him with a fusion coil, celebrated, and then took his energy sword. Screw that guy. The funny part is, down the line, this guy actually seems easy once I get to some further bosses, so that's really fun. But anyways, this video is pretty long, so if it gets 20 likes, I will continue doing this challenge. Subscribe if you like this kind of content, and comment any challenges you would like to see us do in the future. But most importantly, have a good one.